So I want to introduce you this morning to our, this archive webinar in the series of Culture from Home, the spring and summer of 2020. This is the third webinar in our Culture from Home series, and it's following on from our previous webinars on social media and libraries. This is an interesting time. We've called this series Culture from Home because for a long time we were actually at home. We were working from home, our children were home, our grandchildren were home, and we found it very interesting to find out and to learn from our cultural institutions what they were doing to enable, to connect with their communities, to be able to hear about museums, libraries and archives when they themselves were at home and their visitors or their audiences were at home. So this series was really I think very important, and some very interesting stories came out of it. And after our previous webinars, we're now listening to the ideas of archives and how archives are opening up and enabling people to go inside from home. Now, I think we're going to change the name soon from our webinar series from Culture from Home to maybe Culture from Home something, because we're in a transitional period right now. We are in fact not so much at home. Many people are going back to work, and in some countries children are back in school across Europe. And this is a very interesting time, a big question mark for everybody. But I think what is important about our series and what's been happening in this Corona time is that a lot of things have been learned in this these last few months. And the question is, what do we take from this very interesting and very positive experience? What do we take with us into the post-coronal era? So today we're going to listen to two wonderful speakers from the Archivissima in Italy, hold on, and from the National Archives, and I'll introduce you in a minute. I just wanted to remind our visitors today to join us for our next one, the European Education Community, which is holding its webinar on the 11th of June. And presenting will be Isabel Crespo from the European Education Community Manager, and a teacher, Emma Abate, and also the museum educator, Anke. So please put that into your diaries, the 11th of June, and we look forward to hosting you here again, education this time. So don't forget to introduce yourselves in the chat. This webinar is actually recorded, and parts of it may be made available online, so don't say anything you may regret. And later, we invite you to join the European Communicators and you'll see the URL, the link, the short link in here and at the end. Also, we'd be very grateful if you would tell us what you think about this webinar with a little survey, because it helps us think about the next one. And of course, while you're listening to our two speakers, don't forget to tweet. And there's our handle, the Europeana Communicators handle. So add that to yours and please tweet away. So let me introduce you now to Culture from Home and our first speaker, Andrew Payne. Andrew Payne is the Head of Education and Outreach at the National Archive in the UK. And he's going to be talking about present time travel TV, a twice weekly broadcast for children and families that introduce the treasures of the National Archive and suggest exciting follow-up activities for viewers to complete. Time Travel TV began in April as part of the organization's response to the pandemic. Andrew is the Head of Education Outreach at the National Archive in the UK, where he leads the development and delivery of services for teachers, students, families and community groups. Andrew, don't forget to come back again on the 11th of June for our educational webinar. You'll be made the Fellow of the Historical Association 2013 for services to history education, and is the co-founder of the annual International Winter School for Archive training program in using archival collections for education and health projects. So you please ask questions in the Q&A function in Zoom. You'll see the button at the bottom of your screen. And afterwards, of course, you'll all be invited to the Tana Libera Tutti, a free-for-all discussion, and then we will turn off our recording and you'll feel free to be able to speak whatever you wish. So I'm Susan Hazan. Andrew will be speaking first, and then afterwards I'll introduce Giacomo Colochini, the Chief Operation Officer of the Promemoria Group, the company that founded Archivissima. So let me hand the slides over to you, Andrew, and please start.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, and good morning to everybody. And it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you about our time travel TV program. So I think the first thing to say is that time travel TV, even though it only started a week ago, sorry, I now have control. Yes. I don't seem to be able to advance my slides.
There's a lag, a short lag.
Okay.
So click on the screen.
Which may mean that I now advance several times.
Okay.
Okay, so time travel TV started a month ago, but in many ways, actually everything that we have been doing at the National Archives with our education service for the past 20 years has enabled that to happen in such a short space of time. So I don't want to kind of give the impression that we just suddenly magicked up time travel TV from nowhere. It was certainly a rapid response to the current situation, but really it was based on a lot of learning and development that we've been doing with our education service for the past 20 years. And one of the key things that underpins our approach to education is our corporate strategy, which is Archives for Everyone. This belief that archives is one of the great cultural resources, should be available and usable for everybody. And with that corporate strategy comes three kind of key elements. The idea of us being an inclusive archive, that our collection has been created by everyone and therefore should be accessible and usable by everybody, and that we need to actively go out and encourage that use and to broaden our audience. Being entrepreneurial, so responding to exactly these kinds of situations and seeking opportunities when there are difficulties and seeing how we can respond positively to that. And then this idea of archive, which is very much a kind of digital disruption, seeing again how can we find new opportunities to move forward and to develop new services. Something else that underpins this development has been this belief that archives are incredibly powerful, particularly for learning and particularly for students, and that we need to get students into archives and working with them, understanding what archives are, why they're so powerful, and developing a pedagogy around working with documents so that people can use those effectively. And finally, something which I had the pleasure of working with A.D. Carson, who is probably has the best title in the whole of education anywhere in the world. He is Professor of Hip Hop at the University of Virginia. And I had the pleasure of working with him last summer. And I was talking about teaching with archives, and A.D. Carson was talking about teaching with hip hop. But he said something that really resonated with me, which is this idea that teaching happens without a net. That you can't control everything, and neither should you try to control everything when you're teaching, because actually the more control we have as a teacher, the less control students have as learners. So we need to be prepared to kind of give up some control, take risks, and I think that's definitely something that has underpinned everything that we do in education at the archives, and is certainly a bit of a mantra for time travel TV. Just giving it a go, taking a risk, seeing how it works, adapting, responding, and so on. So, as I say, we've had an existing education and outreach program for 20 years at the National Archives. And around 3 years ago, we expanded that to include family audiences as part of Archives for Everyone. We really wanted to bring in younger audiences and to have a mixture of learning and fun in the activities that we do, and to go beyond just a school curriculum approach. So our family program had been developing for several years, and that then developed into a branded program known as the Time Travel Club, which is a mixture of workshops run at weekends and during school holidays. We have special events, we have storytelling activities, we have both facilitated and unfacilitated activities. And we've created this time travel passport so that every time children come to an activity, they can collect another badge. And once they've completed their passport, they then get a special reward at the end of that. So the Time Travel Club has been running for 2 years. It's been increasingly successful. Sessions book out very quickly now. When we were looking to respond to the current situation, we saw the Time Travel Club as a brand that could work well for this. Again, the Time Travel Club came out of our existing workshop program for schools. We teach somewhere in the region of 15,000 students a year, both coming on site to workshops. And there's a really strong pedagogy behind how we work with students, getting students to work actively with our documents, to investigate a key question, and then to use the documents to carry that inquiry through and discover answers. We've taken that online through video conferencing and also through our virtual classroom service, so using a platform called Blackboard Collaborate. And that's allowed us to extend both geographically, but also to understand what works well in an online environment and how to adapt, and also how to present, hopefully effectively online. And the idea of projecting through the screen and having some kind of animation so that delivery comes across well. We have a strong history of using video as part of our education resources. So this is our education website, and I would point out 3 projects that we've done in the past where we've learnt how to use video effectively. One is our Victorians resource, from which we did with the V&A Museum in 2010. And that used the idea of video presenters really kind of taking over the role of the teacher, of introducing activities, of supporting students as they went through the activity, and giving them a framework to follow. That we then developed much more in our 2015 project for Magna Carta, where we actually recreated historical figures to take on the role of being the support, the video support effectively, and encouraging students. So in this case, they act as a mentor or as an assistant to Matthew Paris, who was the great chronicler of the period of Magna Carta. And they actually go around the country interviewing a whole cast of characters, including King John himself, Simon de Montfort, and others, to find out, and using those video characters as guides effectively to the documents that they're working with. And then the third project that we did, working with BBC, to create a series of very short, punchy style videos to allow teachers to introduce a topic into the classroom. In this case, these were only 5 minutes long. They worked on the basis of having about 3 documents, and there was a kind of close video introduction to those documents, explaining what they were, really to set that up as an activity. Now, when it came to using time travel or creating time travel TV, we didn't have the luxury of a full production unit and months of edit time and scripting and so on. We've had to respond very quickly. So, of course, that means that the format is slightly different. But it does take all of that learning that we've done in the past around what makes effective video and effective delivery. And hopefully that comes across in time travel TV. So this is the archives on the 20th of March. So the decision was taken 4 days before that we were going to close to the public. My team left the building on Thursday, and then on the Friday, the whole building was closed down and remained closed still to the public. Certainly as far as my team are concerned, we don't anticipate a reopening of our live on-site services for many months to come. So the response to that has been time travel TV. As Susan says, these are put out twice a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday morning. They are pre-recorded and a structured activity which allows students to investigate a key question. We began with a general introduction to the archives. What is an archive? What are they for? What do you find in them? How are they used? And then over the next 5 weeks, we've been looking at different topics. Our audience is aimed very much at primary school students with their families. They're designed to be a mixture of learning and fun, very much like our time travel activities at the archives have been. It's based on the idea of having a key question. So in this case, what do documents reveal about work in the past? All work and no play. And so we have an introductory video with a mystery document, and we introduce that. We then ask the students with their families to investigate that document, and then they come back and they play the second video, and it moves them on through a series of short videos. Now, one thing I would point out about this is that these really are very short, punchy videos. The introductions are only 1 or 2 minutes long. The follow-up videos are about 4 to 5 minutes at most. So we keep them short, we keep them in order to kind of keep the activity going. Something that we've very much discovered in the past is that video as a format works well, but it needs to be short, it needs to be engaging. And if you go much beyond 5 or 6 minutes, then you kind of lose the impact that video can really have. Do some activity, and then you can follow up with more video afterwards. We record these, pre-record these on Zoom. So you can see Hannah is one of my education team in the top right-hand corner. We have the document available both on the screen, but also for the children to download. And Hannah introduces that document and takes them through and sets them a task to go and look at it and make some observations. Go and talk about the mystery document and then join us for the next part. And when they come back, she then takes them through that document, pointing out particular aspects of it and thinking about what can they learn. In this case, this is a workbook recording the hours done by children in a factory from 1836. And one of the things that we reveal eventually is the age of those children as young as 6 and 7, working 32 hours in a factory in 1836. We then have additional documents. So after a series of around 4 or 5 short videos and guided activity, we then have additional documents with some guidance activity for pupils to go and investigate further. And follow-up activities. This is the kind of fun element in order to engage pupils more. In this case, we asked them to go and look at examples of Victorian games, which we have in our collection that were available for children. And they then go on to design their own game. Other types of program that we've had look at how do personal documents reveal people's lives and what was going on in their lives. And again, it's this idea of a mystery document. In this case, it's a letter written to a man called Herbert Morrison, who was actually the Minister for War at the time in the Second World War, but we don't reveal that until later. And in this particular one, we were working with an author and storyteller called Jodie Ann Bickley, because she's been working on a project, that's Jodie Ann, she's been working on a project both in the archives with us, but also prior to that, called 1 Million Lovely Letters, where people write her letters and she then writes responses. So we thought it would be a fantastic idea to bring her in as a kind of guest presenter for that particular activity. And she gives advice about writing letters, and then the main activity at the end is for the pupils to go off and to write a letter to somebody that they know. We've had tremendous viewing figures for these, as this graph shows. These are just for the first week. When we launched, kind of did the pre-launch of Time Travel TV, you can see a little peak there on April the 19th. And then on the Tuesday, which is the 21st, we had around 1,600 people view our page for the introduction. You can see that continues into the April the 22nd, and then with the second broadcast that we did on Thursday, we were up to 3,000 people viewing, and you can see that continues over the next couple of days, and then it starts again the following week, and those numbers have been increasing week on week. We've also had some really lovely feedback. Just one example of that. This came in just a few days ago, actually, and this is from a mother and her daughter, and actually this gives a great insight into how families are using this kind of activity. She says, we're using these new resources to host a Zoom session and share the videos and document images with several of Francesca's classmates, who are resulting in some great discussions and learning for children and adults alike. We have especially enjoyed the Titanic and census sessions, and we're able to link the propaganda session to some of the things we're experiencing now. So it's been really fantastic to see how families are using the Time Travel TV sessions, both for their own learning, but also then sharing that with their wider families and school groups. So thank you very much. If you have any further questions, you can find out more from the education website, or you can feel free to contact me. I'm the History Man on Twitter. You can also follow the UK National Archives and our education service at the bottom. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you very much. That is fascinating. Before I continue, could you please, I'm talking to the visitors now. People, hello, am I in control? Who's in control here? Would you please put your questions in the Q&A? There's a Q&A button, and we can see your questions. I understand somebody called Dare put their hand up, but I need to hear your questions. So could you please, perhaps in the chat, if you can't find the Q&A button, or preferably in the Q&A button, I can then ask Andrew. But actually, I have a question from Andrew, one I prepared a little earlier, as they say. I'd like to know what happens when your material is actually based, it's prepared for schools and the environment of the classroom and for kids working in groups. And much to the shock of many parents, they had to take over this role at home and suddenly become home teachers. I know this scared a lot of people. And you see lots of parodies, online and social media, how parents at home who then become teachers are scared out of their wits. So that little comment that you had was very useful. But my question is, did you have to rethink your material? I actually downloaded your time travel PDF and had a look, and I must admit I was pulled in by the mice to all your different questions, and I had a great time from home, I have to say, with my family. But did you find that you had to make any changes? Because here it was the parents at the receiving end.
Yeah, and I think that's where the role of the video introducer of using our education team as a guide. In many ways, we recognized that we were providing guidance to parents as much as to the children. And that's certainly something that we do in those family sessions when parents bring their children in, that we like to use the parents really as a kind of guide and a mentor. And we recognize that in many ways, we're not just working with the children, we're also working with parents and carers as well. So yeah, I think we thought very carefully about that guidance that the video instructor, if you like, provides. And really we wanted to kind of model at the investigation technique that we use in our sessions at the archive, so that parents had some idea about what to do.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions from our audience. Just a comment first from our dear Mariana. She says she wants you in Italy managing their archives.
Thank you.
Christina, also from our communicators community, did you consider a TV format for adult cultural lovers? And do you estimate it to be more challenging or difficult to realise?
We have been doing, again, very short webinar style presentations of just sort of 2 minutes long, just introducing a particular document. So again, these are pre-recorded and are done by our record specialists, just really to kind of draw the audience in, introduce them, make them a little bit intrigued, and then that often is linked through to more in-depth blogs which are available online. So I think the use of video is definitely something that we are interested in, and as we develop these techniques for different audiences, we will certainly make more use of, and we will continue to make more use of this as we go forward. It's hard to imagine, having learned how to do this well, it's hard to imagine that we would stop doing this in the future. And certainly for education, we are now taking this into the older age groups. So from next week, we will also be doing sessions for secondary students, because we realise that even though some of them will be going back to school, a lot of them will not be in school full time, and possibly won't be in school full time for many months. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're growing your community in terms of numbers and also ages. It's interesting, from bottom up. Excellent. We have a question here from Adrian Murphy from Europeana, and he has a very professional question because he has a vested interest here. Have you seen that the archives collections are being seen and used by new audiences of the archives at this point? Good question, Adrian.
Yes, we have actually, and certainly our visits to the archives website as a whole over the past month have increased by 35%, which is huge. I think one of the things that has partially driven that has been the fact that we've now made all of our digital collections available for free. And the numbers of digital downloads has increased enormously. The numbers of people registering for the first time to download documents has increased hugely. I think I'm taking a bit of a kind of educated guess based on my memory. I think it's something like 300,000 additional people have registered in order to access and download documents. It's a huge number.
That's interesting. You're getting a lot of compliments in the chat, which I won't read. You can read later maybe, because this was a lovely presentation and it was greatly appreciated by everybody in the audience. So let me thank you for that. Just one more question from EB, whoever that is. Hi, Andrew. Thank you for your inspirational input. You said your videos are quite short. Is the presenter talking all the time, or what's happening around?
So in those particular time travel TV presentations, what they're doing is kind of modeling the investigation. So they are talking throughout those, but as I say, it's about a 2-minute introduction that sets up the activity, and then the video ends, and the children go and look at the document, and they do some investigating. When they're then ready to start the next video, they press that, and the educator then takes them through really a kind of modeling the sorts of things that they could have seen in the document, and then again moves it on to the next stage of the investigation. But that is only a sort of a 3 to 4 minute video at most. So it's a series of very short, punchy videos designed to introduce the next stage of the activity each time.
Thank you. Interesting. We have time for one more question. So from Vlatka Lemik from Croatia, the University of Zagreb Archives, and a former national archivist. And her question to you, Andrew, is what is the profile of the staff involved in educational programs? Who are they?
So in my whole department, I have a team of 12, myself included. Most of us come from an education teaching background, from a history teaching background. We also have people from community work, so particularly our community outreach team tend to come more from a kind of community-based background. But we do have a really strong understanding around teaching and background in teaching, and I would say over the past 20 years, we've become a kind of key part of the whole history teaching community in the UK, and hopefully in the wider community as well. So we're kind of well rooted in pedagogy in that respect.
Absolutely wonderful. Lovely to hear from you. And please jump back in at the end when our open discussion starts. Before we move to Giacomo, could you open your mic? Giacomo, you unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. There's the one comment which I totally disagree with here, and that's from Almira. She says, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Unique example, it seems to me. Thank you, Almira, for your comment, but it's not unique because we've brought to you Giacomo here as well. So I would like to introduce Giacomo. He's the Chief Operation Officer from Promemoria Group, the company that founded Archivissima.
It's hard to say, I know.
Pardon?
It's hard to say. It's Archivissima.
Yeah. Well, you're going to talk about it, not me. So basically, you're making your annual festival of archives, digital archives, producing it through podcasts. And I noticed that podcasts have become extremely popular recently. I think people are tired of looking at screens. Their eyes are tired. And another advantage of a podcast is you can sit together with friends and family and enjoy the experience. It's not a single user. So podcasts have become really useful at the moment. You see that in all the research when you look at numbers. So you're going to be talking about your podcast and how to digitally transfer a festival for people who can't get together and let people physically enter the archive. So let me introduce you to Giacomo. He's a PhD in culture. His CV is so sweet. I really want to read it to you. A PhD in cultural anthropology at the University of Bologna, studying the impact of social conflicts in history on the landscape in Turkey. Now, Giacomo has lived in Turin, in the last 10 years lived in Milan, Rome, Bologna, Barcelona, Aix-en-Provence, Istanbul, Izmir, and Idgir in Turkey. And when moving through the cities, he began to study, work, and experiment with new ways and means of digital communication. And till he found his destination in the world of heritage enhancement and digital archives. So welcome to you. Please continue from here.
Thank you, Susan. And I'd like first to congratulate Andrew and his staff. They really made a wonderful job, and the reasons that they have achieved are great. I mean, 35% public, an increase in public is really great. I will check. The slide is going. Okay.
Yes, slowly. There's a lag, but yes.
Yeah, okay. So I can tell this presentation has something like a bedtime story, a bedtime tale, and say once upon a time, Archivissima was a live event, a social distance free event, and today it's totally digital. So we have had to change everything. Archivissima was founded in 2017 by Promemoria. Promemoria is really a company. We are business driven, and we work almost every time with archives, both public, institutional, and corporate or private archives. We know that I will be really honest with you, and we want to grow as a business, and we know that for growing, we need that everybody knows archives. We really trust in the power of the archives, the power of the sources, okay? Especially today that we have internet and we use Google, and I am used to Google everything, and I'm used, you know, the more than the 50% of people Googling something, they will click on the first or second results. So it means it's the filter bubble. It means that everybody discover only the things that Google thinks that I'm interested in. Okay, so we really think in Promemoria that archives are a solution, an instrument, something more than a repository. And we decided to found Archivissima, a festival with public events, conferences, workshops, talks, art exhibition. So bringing contents from archives and putting in the hands of an artist and make it change everything, the perspective, and make it something totally new. So, we also made a magazine, an independent magazine. The name is Archivio. We have not a lot of fantasy, and the magazine has a different audience, more like 25, 40 years old, and design and art addicted. Archivissima, it's for everyone. It's for schools, for children, for their parents, for everyone that wants to discover something new about the past. So what happened? Archivissima is usually in April, but this was really not possible. And the first time we said, okay, we can make something like a digital event with live, Instagram Live or IGTV or something like Facebook Live, but it was not enough. So we think that we can change the way, and we start to thinking about podcasts. And we decide to realize podcasts, to bring everything from the archive, to involve all the archives, and starting building podcasts. So this is really a preview, because this morning at 11 we will have our press conference, and we will bring to live, so online, our website. This I'm really sorry, because all the contents are in Italian only, but this is from Domus, a well-known newspaper. Also in Archivissima, we bring together public, institutional, private, corporate archives, everything together, okay? And this is a preview of our online website. Under the name, on the top of the left of the page, you will, on June 5, it will display a player, and you can start play and watching at the documents, and start listening the archivists that start to tell you a story about these documents. This is the way it will work, and the things that will it was really surprising for us was that in the first time we have had 140 archives that they were planning to take part at Archivissima when it was a live event. When we start to say to them, we cannot make a live event, you cannot open the door of your archive because no one can get in. Then we say, okay, we will make podcasts, and we were waiting for 15 podcasts, 40, 50 podcasts. We say, okay, 50 podcasts, we are really happy, and the job is well done. Now we have 180 podcasts because archives that are all the year closed, they say we can participate there. Okay, so the number, we expand the audience, and we expand the number of the archives. So everything grew with a digital production, and was really surprising for us. And why we decide to produce a series of podcasts. A podcast is a rising trend, as Susan said before, and was something that that we thought that was appropriated to archive. It needs it needs a little bit of concentration, and you have to listen, and listening is something more similar to learn than only watching. So this was our choice. So we taking everything. The second point is that taking everything, a physical event, and bring it to digital with podcast was only a way to keep the fund, the money that we get in the first time from sponsor and partner, and also sponsor and partner were really happy to have something digital that they can reuse in a second time. So they said, okay, we will give you the money we promise, also if Archivissima is not anymore a digital, physical event. And podcasts have another kind of advantage, is that they are easy to do. They are low-cost production for everyone. So was the right, for us, was the right shows. How we approach it, production. We make something like what was really funny, a do-it-yourself, something like make a podcast for dummies, okay, to for everybody.
Lovely.
And in this way, was really easy to record the podcast, and the result are really satisfying for us. We made 3 kinds of podcasts. We have someone with well-known writers like Michela Muggia, Matteo Caccia, Italian writers, of course, are sponsored content. They are always about archives, but they are sponsored content and made in a business way. Okay. Then we have the storytelling of archival documents by Valentina De Poli, that was an editor of Topolino, a magazine for children, and she recorded 10 podcasts. Okay, and then we have 180 podcasts from everyone, from every archivist in Italy. So 3 series, 3 levels of podcasts for everyone. The topic of the festival was woman. So documents and story will be around archival materials concerning the female figure in different region, context, okay, to have a link, something that bring everything together. Which technologies we advise to use? How do you devise mobile app or line recording service? We really make something like yeah, something like a guide for dummies. And we start to make practical tips like please put in the room a lot of stuff, not or please stay away from windows, and stay away from something that is noisy, okay? And take care of your breathing. And start, and we made a lot of examples to listen, something that was easy to do for everyone. Then how we distribute the podcast? We will make a live streaming. All the podcasts will be available from June 5, the first day of the podcast. We will have 4 days of live streaming. The last day is a conference, archival conference, okay, on the topic for archivists. But the first 3 days of the festival are for everybody, are for a large public. Our mission is to expand the audience, okay? So I think that we have a lot of different topics. We have women as a guide topic, but the main topic. But after we have archive from design, archive from history archive, or archive from city archive, or also small archive from little production. And the best thing is that the podcast will remain available and shareable online. What are our outcomes for now? We experiment direct participation and collaboration, and it was not easy, and also with 100, like more than 200 archives altogether, was hard to manage, because we are only like 6-7 people that take Archivissima to live, so it was really hard for us. We really implement audience development practice, and this really works great on both the side, as I said before, okay? So from a side of archives participation and for the public. And we have more collaborators, more partners. For us was really, for now, because the festival will be in 2 weeks, but for now is a success. So thank you.
Fantastic. That was marvelous. That was very encouraging. I'm going to take away, first of all, I know before I start on everybody's questions, everybody wants to know is where can they find the do-it-yourself podcast for dummies instructions. So please make that available for us. I know everybody in the audience wants that as well.
I will send it to Beth.
Yeah, we'll make it available if that's okay. Because
yeah. We will translate it, okay?
Yeah.
Because we are in Italian, of course.
Also, it's a good opportunity to learn some Italian, by the way.
Okay.
Another thing, I have a personal takeaway before I get to the questions, and we have a couple of nice questions here. The phrase you said, record your video smiling, or the podcast smiling. I mean, even when you do a podcast, no one can see you. When you smile, it makes a big difference. I would take that into a broader arena. I would say, record your life smiling. Smiling right now. And we definitely need that. That's lovely. A couple of questions here. One from Herminia Sol, and she's asking about the general profile of your users. Basically, who are the users? And she's interested to know which gender uses it, uses the podcast most. Do you have that stat?
Yeah, it's hard to say because the podcasts are not already live. Usually, the general user of Archivissima, okay, the general profile of participants are half woman, half man, a lot of families that they can find something different to do in the weekend. And
you can't really profile your audience.
People, but was always in Turin before this year. So we don't have a panel, something that really can ask this question.
Are you going to survey your audience?
Sorry?
Are you planning on surveying your audience?
We didn't think that because it was too hard to change. We usually did this on with the last the last time in the last year event. But for the digital one, we really didn't take I will take note about that.
Because we're going to survey our audience. Dear audience, you participants, and we're 58 participants from all over the world by looks of it, would you please take our survey at the end? A question here from Vladka again. Do you think, or do you have interest to offer this model outside of Italy or at a national, regional level? And if yes, who would your potential partners be for such an activity?
Yeah, for Promemoria, that it's a business, a company, it's really hard to also have 180 archives to manage. Okay, so we tried this year to take it all over Italy, was a success, but we hope to take it to Europe, but will be really, we can talk honestly, we will need a lot of more funds and a big staff to make it European. We cannot do something so complex, because it's really complex with our own hands. We are only 7, you know. So the company is 40 people, but the people that work in Archivissima are 7 people. So.
Wow, that's a lot of work. Well, you obviously made a great start. So some good things are happening out of this terrible time that's spurning us to creative solutions. So that's interesting. I have a couple more questions for you, Giacomo.
Yeah.
From Luca Melchiona. Giacomo, would you say that podcasts are the right tools for paid distribution as well? And the other question here is, would you, from Luca, would you say that reduced mobility for commuting had a negative impact on access to podcasts?
I'm sorry, I
negative.
don't understand the second question, and I cannot read it. So
no, would you? Well, let's start the first one. Are you happy that you've chosen the right tool for paid distribution? Or would you say paid distribution? This would be the correct tool as well.
Yeah, I really, you know, it's an experiment. I really cannot answer. It will be something that I think, but I have no proof, no test, no proof. So it's a little bit hard to answer now. We can remake a conference at the end of June and answer many questions more.
A question from Christina. Do you consider Twitter as well as an engagement social media channel? Are you using Twitter to promote your material?
Not for our audience. We start.
Who are your audience?
Yeah, in Italy, Twitter is not working so good. So it's working more Facebook for parents and Instagram, because of they implement many tools, so it's easy to use it right now, and everybody from 15 to 25 are using Instagram.
So if you have any more questions, please put them in the QA. And may I ask Andrew to pop back? And maybe Andrew has some questions to Giacomo also, from archivist to archivist.
Yeah, I'm really not an archivist.
Well, okay, yeah, from archive to archive. Yeah.
Yeah, for me.
I will ask a question if I may, Giacomo. Have you kind of worked out a list of podcasts that you want to do? Are they sort of particular documents or particular topics that you want to investigate? Have you got those mapped out for the next few weeks, or how far in advance are you planning on these?
We made 2 different planning. One was to make 10 podcasts well done, with a little bit of money behind, okay? And we try to touch many points. So everything was linked to one woman, but we touched many points, and we decided. On the other side, we open to everyone, and we will also publish a lot of podcasts that we have no time to listen before. So we really hope that everyone will be honest, and because they are too much, really.
I want to go back to the mobility question. It's about people who can't really commute anymore, but they have a chance to sit with their headphones on and listen to podcasts. They have time for podcasts. Do you think this has made a difference?
I don't know if it's made the difference. I think that, as you said before, I think that listening is something different. And I think that before, where I was a commuting people, and I was part of that group, and I was used to listen a lot. But a lot of my friends, they start in the last month or 40 days to listen something, to cooking and listening something. So I mean, listen, I think that it's something that works well. And also I'm used to listen with other people, as you say, and we also are used at home to read and listen, to read at a high voice and listen. So I mean, the main point with podcasts, you can use it a lot of time. That was the main point for us.
In my research, that in our museum, we found that podcasts have advantages. People are totally zoomed out, and we're apologizing that we're using Zoom again, because people's eyes have been on the screen. People who are working at home are working with Zoom all day. They're socializing with their friends on Zoom in between. They're drinking a cup of coffee or a glass of wine on Zoom with their friends. And people's eyes are getting square and very tired. And there's something very relaxing just to listen to human voice, especially when you're learning something or you're getting some new information and something is inspirational. And the best thing when you're listening is to sit with a friend or family and listen together. So you can relax, calm down, and pick up new information, new experiences, and share, which is critical. So I think we're seeing, certainly the research has shown us. I made some changes in my museum. We recommended using podcasts, and podcasts were put up with very high profile. And suddenly you see a spike in the usage. People are kind of going to the podcasts with great enthusiasm. So you're obviously onto a good thing, and it's something we can all take away.